welcome to ET Garage. Today's video is going to be preventive maintenance on the poly bushings. Okay, like I was saying, today's video is going to be preventive maintenance on the poly bushings. And anyone who doesn't follow my channel, I put a lot of miles on this C4. It's over 255,000 miles right now. Poly bushings have about 75,000 miles. That's an estimate. If you haven't seen the video on what they refer to as the dog bones, I redid those. And I'll leave a link to that video somewhere up here at the end of the video. But those bushings were still in very good shape, and except for some corrosion. I just went ahead and replaced them. I just went ahead and ordered a set before I did them. This way I could just do it and get it back together and use the car. But I could have just cleaned those up and lubricated them, and they would have been fine. They were actually in good shape. Today, I am going to get this car in the air, get the rear wheels off, and I'm going to do what they refer to as the spindle rods. And the factory service manual, that's what they refer to them. They're actually, a lot of people refer to them as camber rods or lower control arms. I actually don't have the factory ones. The ones I have are actually referred to as smart struts. I don't know why they call them smart struts, because they're not struts. They're basically really it acts as a lower control arm that controls your camber on the rear wheels. And anyway, I'll go over that here soon. In the meantime, I'm going to start getting this sucker in the air. Okay, over here we have the spindle rod, or in this case it's referred to as a smart strut. There's the one lower bolt and nut that needs to come off. These can be difficult to get off, and especially if they've never been off before. Mine have been off before, and they have anti-seize on them and all that stuff, so they'll come off pretty easy. I sprayed them anyway. And then over on the other end, you have the end right here. Hopefully you guys can see that. And you have another big bolt with the camber bracket that's used to adjust the spindle rod. In this case, this is a different bracket. When I get this off, I will go over the details between the difference between a smart strut and the factory spindle rod and all that good stuff in these brackets that I'm using. I'm not going to remove this bracket. I'm just going to remove that bolt. Putting this back on and getting it off can be difficult. It's sort of like an angle. You might have to jack up the carrier, you know, the bearing carrier or spindle carrier, whatever you want to call it, and to get the right alignment to get everything out. And depending on your application, like I have this aftermarket exhaust, I should be able to get this one off without removing the exhaust. And you should on the factory exhaust also. We'll find, I'm pretty sure I've done it before, so I just can't remember. I'm getting old, I guess. But let me get this off, and I'll show you on the bench the differences. And we'll see what kind of shape these bushings are in. Okay, as you can see, I got the upper part of it loose. I had to remove the bracket, or loosen the bracket up. I couldn't get the bolts out because the top bolt doesn't clear the spring. I could undo the spring and lower it and probably clear it and get the whole bracket off, but I don't need to. And I need to loosen that bracket up in order to get this camber bolt out. And all I got to do is get this out. This does not want to come out. Don't know what's going on, but normally it slides out. I think what happened is the bushing, or the sleeve that's in here, might have wore into the aluminum, but it shouldn't, because there's washers on each side, as far as I know, or shims. So it shouldn't have done that. So I'm going to have to beat on it or something. I don't want to spread this casting because it's cast and it will crack. So I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to have to work this thing. I tried pry bar and everything else. So I'm probably going to have to do some hammering to get it off, unfortunately. But let's see what I do and see if I get that sucker off. All right. Here we have the factory spindle rod or camber rod, whatever you want to call it. And as you can see, it's sort of offset. So there's a left and a right. And these have poly bushings in them. I did them when I did all the poly bushings on this car. And I added Zerk fittings to it. These are still in good shape, but I'm not using these. I'm using what they refer to as a smart strut, which is a spindle rod. And the difference is this is just like a tie rod on a car. Got two locking nuts and you unscrew it and they go in and out. Where the factory one uses this camber here and there's a slot in this bracket. When you turn it, it moves the rod in and out to adjust your camber. Now you can use this with the factory bracket and the camber bolt, or in my case, I don't have the bracket off because I couldn't get it off without removing a bunch of stuff, but it's the same bracket except going in and out this way, it goes up and down this way. And that's what they call a camber, or a smart camber bracket or something like that. And what that does is it changes the geometry of the rod in relation to the half shaft. And that is to give your suspension more adjustability by increasing this downward like that. It somehow it affects the camber as the wheel goes up and down, and there's less change in the camber as the wheel goes up and down than the factory one. I think the factory one is only like 2-degree difference. With this, it takes it down to almost nothing. I did another video on it somewhere, but and that helps you better traction coming out of turns, and if you're a drag racer, it helps you better traction launching. I'm not sure how. There's others. I've read other things how it affects handling in other ways. I'm not sure, but this bushing down here is actually, I got to actually hammer it out. That's how tight it is in there. And you can see where I had a shim in there. And if you're wondering how I got this out, is I had to rotate the half shaft so I could move this like that back and forth, and then it just came out. So I just had to move it at a slight angle to get it out. It's just one of those things. So this bushing here is real tight. I got to knock that out and lubricate it. This one here has a little play in it that will be taken up by the lubricant. I ain't too worried about it, especially when this is clamped down. I'm not sure if these, I can't actually remember where I got this smart strut from, or that they refer to as a smart strut. I think it might have been Corvette Central or something like that. I can't remember. It's one of the catalog companies. Long time ago. I've had this on here a really long time. It'd be nice to know if I can get these bushings. These might just be standard bushings that I can order, you know, like universal bushings. I don't know. If not, you'd have to get the whole new arm, which I wouldn't want to do. Another thing I could do if I really, really wanted to, like pulling it out, you can see it's actually kind of tight, even though it's got a little play in it. When it's in there, it's a little tight. If I wanted to, I could go on my lathe and just make a slightly bigger version of this, and that would take up the slack. But it's not enough slack in there to worry about. When this is tightened, there's no play. I guarantee it. Yeah, there's almost no play here now. Actually, I gotta wiggle it pretty hard, but that's how that works, and that's the differences in the struts. What I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to hammer these out, put this one back on. I'm not going to film putting it back on. It's basically the same as the reverse. For whatever reason, putting it back on could be more difficult You loosen up this bracket bolts if you have to, or get the bolts out completely, and that makes it easier. There's another thing is to jack up the spindle carrier, or the bearing hub carrier, whichever you want to refer to it. And I'll get this done, get it back in, and get everything back together, and do the other side, of course. Okay, I hope this was informative. Sorry I didn't show every detail of taking it out, but I see people on the forums having problems all the time getting these in and out. It's just a matter of getting everything lined up. You know, like I said, loosen this bracket, the camber bracket here, if you have to, or remove it. That helps. I've heard of people taking the lower shock mount off, you know, unbolting the shock from the lower mount, and it helps manipulate the bearing carrier or spindle carrier, whatever you want to refer to it as. That helps. If it's an old high mileage C4 Corvette, like when the first time I took this apart, and there was a lot of corrosion I had to fight. In fact, I seen corrosion, even though I put the anti-seize, I think I seen corrosion on those bolts that hold this camber bracket in, so I'll have to relube them. So you just gotta expect that sort of thing. Even a low mileage one that's well kept, the first time you take them off, you're going to have to fight them. Refer to the torque specs when tightening everything back up in the factory service manual. If I remember, or I'll look it up and include it, and all that good stuff. So you should torque everything. A lot of times I don't do that. You know, certain things I do, and a lot of things I don't. It makes it a lot easier if you have power tools, of course. If you don't, you can do it manually. I've done a lot of stuff like this manually before I used power tools when I was young, and got the job done. It's just a lot easier with power tools if you have them, or if you have to borrow them or whatever. Anyway, I'm going to get to work on these. I'll re-lube them, put it back in, and then do the other side. And then hopefully the next video I'll be doing the upper and lower control arms, which is a lot more work in some ways, and in some ways it ain't. But I'll go over that in the next video, and we'll see how that goes. So, in the meantime, everybody have a great day, and God bless.